your Friend in the Darkness podcast. It's episode number 4, and today I'm delving into life as a NICU mom, reflecting on some of the challenges and some of the fallout, I suppose, of going through such a traumatic time. And yeah, just taking you on the journey of what that was like as a first time mother to then have a child in the NICU and some of the kind of traps that I guess I fell into as well. So it's an interesting one to start. I think a kind of vignette of where I was at was still this kind of place of comparison. And immediately after giving birth, there was that separation that I spoke about in the birth story. And in particular, there was this one hard moment that just really showed the beauty of my mom, actually. She just got me. I think this was the time for my relationship with my mother to just really shine. And she really just channeled Mother Mary. That's all I can say, because I felt so loved and so understood by her, and she just really understood the motherhood experience, the hormones I was experiencing, and also the grief of this kind of birth ideal that I was separated from my child. So, in this particular example, we were sitting in the hallway waiting for my husband to arrive before we went in to the NICU. So, it was during COVID. There were quite a few restrictions, so only the immediate parents can enter to access the baby. And in that time, I was kind of sitting there in the wheelchair, just having given birth, and this woman was wheeled past on a bed, and it was like this beautiful parade of life that followed her. She had a baby on her chest, so she had given birth via cesarean. That's what I understood. And the grandparents of the child walked past, the uncles, the aunties, and I think there were literal balloons. And I was joyful for her, but in that moment, I started to weep. And my mum, she just hugged me. And I think she just knew. She knew what had happened. It was the birth that I had wanted for myself. I was wondering, where's my parade? I can't even, show off my baby. I can't be with my baby. There was so many things that I was grieving about the experience and things that I didn't expect would happen. And I was still making peace with what had happened because I'd sort of just been through this big separation, and all these medications were still in my body, and was having strange dreams. Turns out it was just the little yellow or orange tablet they give you. It was that one about, being separated from Remy. So it's already like this really rough battleground, and recovering from the vertical incision was just really tough. And I think that was kind of the backdrop to where I was. I wasn't feeling my best self, and my emotions were pretty high. And yeah, just being in that sensitive space about, will baby make it, will baby not make it, and having new information coming in all the time about baby's state. And I got used to having calls at all hours of the night, because often when doctors were making a decision, they'd be including us in it to an extent, which was fantastic, but also very stressful. And Remy really did receive the best of care. For 53 days, we were there with him. And yeah, we were sort of living in hospital accommodation, and we met some beautiful souls along the way as well, who were also there for all different reasons, visiting their loved ones in hospital, and were also in the same position that we were, that we did not live in a regular sort of commute distance away from the hospital. But yeah, so there was this sense of already being so far from home, yet now this place had become my home because my first son was there and my first child was there. So yeah, I still consider this city my heartbreak city, because I love it, but it broke my heart as well. And that's sort of these feelings that I have towards NICU. I was so drawn to it, but at the same time I wanted to run away. I wanted to relive it, but I also want to run away from it and not have anything to do with it and try not to have to give birth at that particular hospital again. And it's just, yeah, it's a real mix of emotions. And so coming back to this theme of comparison, I met so many beautiful mums along the way and parents, little families and little babies. And our particular room was like the hardcore intense room where you've got one-to-one care 24/7. And I'd kind of just sit back and watch as these babies would slowly graduate to having less and less needs. And our little Remy, he stayed put. He was always in the most intense space. There was no real plan for him to sort of graduate because there were already little setbacks coming in every day that he was fighting. And I feel like that was what it felt like to get a bad report card, I guess, as a parent. Just seeing that, he was failing different tests and he wasn't able to ultimately get off the ventilator, which he eventually needed when his lungs got tired. So there was just a lot, and we were learning a lot. I think, practically speaking, I sort of know what happens in a NICU now. I might not have the nurse's degree or qualifications, but I definitely learned a lot of new terminology. I saw sort of the dynamics between doctors versus nurses and how nurses are really putting these practical applications of instructions from doctors and doing an amazing job, because sometimes those instructions are pretty complex and haven't been well thought out in terms of practicality for a nurse, how they're going to manage. And we saw the dynamic between different consultants as well, and the power battles and all of that, which I think unfortunately is just part of the hospital experience. And it was lovely to meet other mothers, but I felt I couldn't fully relate to their journeys because our child was sick and getting sicker, whereas some of the other conditions, it just seemed like NICU was just like this safe place for them to be while they got better. And I did learn later that actually in our current age, it's pretty rare to have a death of a child or a mother in birth, especially with resources and the right, medical attention and all these beautiful interventions that we have in, in wealthier countries. We're actually doing pretty well in terms of maternal deaths and baby deaths. So it's yeah, it was hard for me to kind of be comparing and contrasting. But I have to tell you that what actually made my heart sing was the women that were reaching out to me and just holding me while their own child was sick. And yeah, there was many mothers that were beautiful. And yeah, they got me gifts. They left notes for me at our bedside. And just being so encouraging. And I hope I can be that to someone else one day. Because these women, like, they just knew. They knew the heartbreak of what we were all going through, which was separation from child. And I think on the really bad days in the NICU, when I was just so over it, didn't know if I had the energy to do it anymore, and the alarms are going off, or we've witnessed something else that's a bit gruesome, a bit graphic, a bit traumatic, God would just come and remind me in the form of other women in different circumstances. There was a lady waiting to be buzzed in at the NICU, and I asked her, and she was in a wheelchair, so I knew she's probably just had a cesarean. And I said, "Hey, can I let you in?" And she said, "No, I'm not allowed to go in." I said, "Are you not a mother?" She said, "Yeah, I am a mother." And because it's just visitors that aren't allowed to go in, right? Well, so I thought. And it turns out she had to wait for police members or social workers to come and join her before she could go and see her child. So that was her specific circumstances. And I found out that up to a third of the babies born in the NICU were actually born with some sort of a dependency, and that's why they're there, is to just slowly get better and go through the withdrawal process. Um, so yeah, my heart really broke because I was already thinking, oh, it sucks not to be able to see my child, have him overnight with me, for example. But yeah, to have even more restrictions placed upon how often I could see him. I'd pretty much just come and stay there for the day every day. And, we'd go out briefly, but I always stayed within a 10-minute radius of the hospital. I just could not bring myself to go out any further. It meant that we were there for all the big moments. Every time the hospital called and told us, hey, it's time to say goodbye, we were able to get there and do it and say goodbye. And just, the first time they called to say that, it was just too soon. It was only 7 days in. I hadn't even held him yet. And I just thought, this can't be it. We can't say goodbye. And it was like this big moment. I'm like, we have to tell him something to send back to God. Like, what message is he going to have? And yeah, but thankfully it wasn't his time yet. We actually were given another, I can't do maths currently in this state, but, another 40 days with him. And yeah, I think it helped prepare us, though, for what was coming, because we did eventually say goodbye, and you can listen to that episode where I talk about his final day. But yeah, so life in the NICU was tough. And the other kind of theme, I guess, I was really touched by the work of all the medical team. I felt like they loved him like I loved him. Really, they did. And it was nice because, just one of the staff members would sort of treat him like it's this little sleepover they're having, and they're having lots of fun together. And so that's where I got the idea to make these little cookies that said Remy's bestie on them, for each of the people that were on Remy's medical team, and the cleaners, and for everyone that were running the NICU, essentially. And because they were his besties, I think they did what friends do for one another, which is where they're in those inconvenient moments, especially for the doctor that resuscitated him multiple times towards the end. And he was the one that was actually there for his birth as well. So it was beautiful to watch that connection that this particular doctor had with Remy. And so, the NICU was this, complex place of, it kind of felt like a war, but it was a place of healing too, and that's what my husband kept telling me. He's like, the hospital is just a place of healing, and it looks messy, but it is ultimately a place of healing. And I found that really hard because I just felt so foreign and so alienated in this world where things were tightly controlled and sterilized, and I was still finding ways to compare myself to others. I was really upset that I couldn't pump enough milk. I was pumping, 1 or 2 mils, sometimes 5 mils. That was my record. I was counting my life in mils, and I was, comparing the fridges full of breast milk that other mothers seem to be able to produce and freeze. They even had extra milk for freezing, and I just thought, I can't produce, and I can't, I'm being told that my milk is the magic milk that is what he needs. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I can't get it. It's not working for me. But I persisted with pumping anyway. And so those kinds of practicalities and comparisons, it did kind of steal my joy in that space. And I think I wish I had sort of let go of that. But there was one thing I was adamant at doing, was keeping my standard to how I treat others, because there were times when I kind of lost it at people, and people kept saying, it's okay, you're going through a hard time, and I just thought, no, sorry. Even if you're going through a hard time, it's not okay to yell at people that are trying to save your son's life, or I'm not going to change my standard for who I am, because I don't want to lose myself in the grief and in the trauma. I don't want to also then lose who I am. And so that was really important to me. So there were times I lost it, but I pulled myself back into line, and the staff were really gracious about it. There was, people in particular I had spoken to quite firmly, but they totally understood, and it was almost like their compassion. It just made me feel even worse because I just felt like, no, you should never be spoken to as rudely as I spoke to you. So, but it was nice to have that compassion for sure, because it was a tough space to be in. And yeah, it's the compassion that we should always have for each other, I guess. So I think at the end of the day, it was a blessed time, but it was definitely the trial. It was the like running the marathon part of being in hospital, and we only made it because of all of the support around us. We had people driving up from um, from all over to give us frozen food, meals that they had cooked, taste of home. We had people sending us parcels and flowers to the NICU. We had people praying for us every day. And that was what brought us a sense of normal in the hospital, was just having our daily, prayer meeting that I'm sure some of you were tuning into every day. And it really did just bring a sense of home, that we could just still pray with our son as we would with any of our children. We'd pray with them every night. And then the miracles were happening. And that was what really, just really helped us pull through as well. And I kind of spoke about some of the providence that surrounded Remy's life. And then the comparison kind of melts away, because I started to realize that these were blessings that I had been given, and that I shouldn't look at other people's blessings, because that's for them. But this is our particular journey. And I've had so many blessings that others don't have, so there's no point in doing a comparison. So yeah, I think that's kind of my main takeaways from the NICU. And there were times, I think a lot of the pain that I had does boil down to comparing when particular mothers were having reactions to certain procedures that I thought, well, that's nothing near what Remy had to go through. And but now I get it. Like, now having a normal child, I get why there'd be certain things. There are some worries that are just universal with parents, and I think that was something I was telling a lot of people afterwards, was that, well, actually we've all sort of lost children, because even a parent who has a child that lives old enough to, move out of home, there is a sense of losing them. There is a sense of grief. You grieve every day as they grow bigger and they become independent and they no longer rely on you for things. It's a joy, because you've kind of done the thing that you're meant to do, is help them mature. So I think the grief is there for everyone. But yeah, the hat goes off to all the NICU staff people, the people that put themselves in that situation every day, the people that were strong enough to sit with us, the people that were brave and courageous to come in and make decisions with us about Remy's life, and to look after him. That was my time in the NICU. And it was a sense of uniting both my husband and I, because we were just like this team with the hospital, and it kind of mediated. Whereas it is different when you then go on to have a child that I feel like doesn't belong to a hospital, because then, it feels a little bit more disjointed somehow. But yeah, we'll talk more about that another time. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I hope it all lines up, but I'm hoping the next episode will be with a guest. Someone who I met while musicking in Sydney, who really touched my soul with her music, and I can't wait to introduce her properly next time. I hope you have a great day.